Hello. Okay, so let's just talk about the blatantly obvious again with modern cinema. The obvious elephant in the room, right? This movie makes no goddamn sense whatsoever. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't tell you what movie we're talking about. We're talking about the Space Jam 2 movie. Now, this is called Pandering Children. It's when it's when the movie makers decide, you know what was great back in the day? That one film. That only was one. It's not a franchise. It was just the one film, and it did reasonably well. So why don't we take that out of, you know, take that franchise out of, well, not really franchise, but that concept, this whole thing out of mothballs, dust it off, and try to see if we can make this into a franchise. Because they don't have any good new ideas. So, all right, let's do that. So we get Space Jam 2. Now, I've seen Space Jam 1. It's a simple, straightforward enough story. In the Tuniverse, or whatever you want to call it, there is this Martian guy on Mars who has his theme park, I guess, that isn't doing very well. He decides to go and get some Looney Tunes to be their star attraction. So they go invade and say, "We're gonna take you over," but he says, we can't give ourselves to you, surrender to you unless you beat us at basketball." They say fine and say, "Okay, we need to bring in a ringer. We need someone who actually knows what to do." So they bring in Michael Jordan. So Michael Jordan is brought in, and then he trains them. They face off against each other, and then they win. And Michael's B plot thing with his career is also added to. So blah 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 inside the Toon universe and outside the Toon universe. There are plots that are going on. Okay, so that's a setup and basic overall structure of Space Jam 1. What is presented to me in Space Jam 2, I don't know what the fuck that is, because it just does not compute. Okay, so we start off with some guy named King. I'm guessing he's the new Michael. Okay, fine. Whatever. The new guy, this King, has a career, and his kid doesn't feel loved or something, some standard bullshit where it's like, you can't let me be me. Yeah, like he has a fucking identity, sure. You're 10. What identity do you have? My God, yes. Jesus. Anyway, at least his father's getting him into a profession that actually pays. Rather well, and isn't exactly that hard. Like, you don't need a PhD in dribbling a basketball to get money. Like, come on. Anyway, so randomly, a lot of the stuff is just so uh, not magnanimous. It's this happens, then this happens, then this happens, right? And not for this to happen or because this needs to happen. It's just this happens. So their little dynamic is that they're fighting. The kid and dad mysteriously somehow find a way into a digital archive. Like that's how the magical, you know, Google or whatever processors archives look like, in a database. And the kid somehow, like, I'm going to use that term a lot, somehow gets magically transported into basically the virtual space, and the dad does too. And then the big AI that's running the spot says, "Okay, you know what? If you want your kid back, face me at basketball, because just because." Dad says no or whatever, so he decides, or something like that, and he decides to toss him into the Tooniverse for his team. So he tosses him into the Tooniverse, which they don't acknowledge that they've met before. Again, why? And so there's no prior knowledge to the first Space Jam movie. So I don't know how this is a sequel if it's never happened before, whatever. And then they get 3Dified, and they are brought into the more 3D verse, and then they have the face off, and it looks like they're trying to bring in everything under their franchise. So it looks like they bothered to say, hey, you know also what was cool? Ready Player One. What if we brought in everything in our franchise as the, I'm guessing like the audience or something like that to fill in the stands. So they're gonna do that, but instead of making it a monochrome, they actually decided to make it all neon and bright and colored and vibrant, which is what you should have done to begin with. So it looks like they're trying to do what Ready Player One tried to do, but Ready Player One failed because they say, well, color, that's too much. We'll put it in a monochrome. So you have to, like, put zoom in or whatever in order to actually see anybody clearly. Because all the times you see the stuff in the trailers, that's all been colorified because they know that's the money shot to be put in the trailer. So the part with the wave and Batman and the part with Marvin the Martian and all that. That's all because those are the parts you people are going to remember in the trailer. And they think, well, the movie isn't all like that. Actually, it is. Like 98% of it is basically in monochrome. So this doesn't do that sin for because they want to market it strictly for children. So again, so a lot of the setup and reasoning and logic that the first Space Jam had, the second Space Jam has nothing of that. There's no reason outside, no reason for them to be at the database. There's no reason for there to be a portal into the VR world. There's no reason for an AI to challenge this king person to a video game. There's no real reason for him to send him to the Tooniverse. So there's like a dozen, there's no reason for that to happen at all, except arbitrarily, you know, happens. It's on a whim. It's kind of more just because. Again, that's not how you tell a story. That's not how you make a movie. You know. So this movie's setup is a mess. So am I gonna like it? I'm gonna like the visuals. Like any child, you show them a shiny quarter, they will be entertained. But anyone who actually wants to bother to look at it and actually pay attention to what's going on outside of 15 minutes and anything that's bright and colorful will notice this movie first going into its second act is a mess. The third act, okay, fine, you're going to have antics after you meet the Looney Tunes and get 3Dified. Sure, that would be a lot more entertaining because that would be a lot more straightforward because there's no more, event to event to event sort of thing. As opposed to what the Act 1 going into Act 2 is, because that's setup. Yeah, so the setup of this is just shit. I'm sorry, it just is. It just is. There is no reason for any of this movie to happen other than people wanted to make it to make money. That's it. So, yeah. Unless the second trailer comes out that bothers to explain itself a little bit more, I'm not really getting my hopes up for that first act. Not to mean that I won't see it. It's just I'm not holding my expectations too high. Okay. So, yes. So that's all I have for that for now. Hey, I hope it's a good film. I hope it's a good, entertaining film. That it still comes across as something worth my $10. Now that the theaters are back open again. So, yeah. So, take care, fair, faithful viewer, and remember, I'll be seeing you at the theaters again. Bye.